So welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to another battle replay. This one is going to be on 0.96, as quite a lot of the larger set piece battles I end up showing probably will still be on 0.96 for a little while yet, as obviously 0.97 is still in development. There will still be a few from the test build, obviously here and there as people play them, and hopefully I can be in some of those as well. But this is going to be a 3v3 on Mountain Pass, obviously a nice classic map, and it is worth saying as well that this is not part of the Good vs Evil tournament, and there will be a mix of both good and evil factions on both sides. I have seen recently a couple of comments saying that they much prefer it when it's sort of good versus evil all the time, but this simply is not practical for me to try and do. So while I can certainly understand if that's your prerogative and you don't want to watch anything other than good versus evil, that's fine, but do not expect me to cater to that point of view exclusively, because it just won't happen. I won't be able to put out video, one a week would be sort of the output I would be down to then, and that it's just not going to work. So it's obviously up to you whether you like sort of this sort of format or not, but I cannot cater to that point of view, I'm afraid. So we will start off with the player who sent me this replay, and this is going to be Zero, who's going to be playing as the Realm of Mirkwood. Obviously he's got some Dagnirim Ik ERED over here, obviously a very good horse archer unit, quite fragile, but very damaging, very accurate. And then they are going to be backed up by another unit of Dagnirim, so a couple of horse archers here, so more for harassment purposes than anything else, but obviously Mirkwood very good at range in terms of their quality, although in 0.96 of course it is very possible to override quality with a lot of low quality archers, just getting that volume down range. We've got some Hiri Peng as well, and heavy elven archers obviously can double as pretty nice heavy swordsmen also. Although again, with the elven numbers being what they are, you do need to be a little bit careful. They are a little bit tougher individually than a lot of the other Mirkwood archers, just because they do have a sort of an armor value slightly higher than the average, but Mirkwood definitely not based around their armor. We've also got some Argui Inanwaith over here, which is this the general's unit? It is. So Thranduil right on the front line here with the rest of his archer companies. Obviously a fantastic unit really, with multiple HP, very strong in melee. But again, they can be overwhelmed if they're not supported, as most of the sort of elite elven units tend to be that way. Another unit of Hiri Peng as well, and I believe, yes indeed, we have the Aradirith Amon Lank here. Some of them are pointing the wrong way at the moment, but I'm sure they will turn around and get into position promptly. Obviously their main selling point, they can hide anywhere, which is nice. They've got a lot of accuracy, a lot of damage at range, but also they pull out a big axe in melee, which does make them AP. Looking at the rest of the army here, we do have some MITHRIN, which certainly a very good tool for zoning out cavalry, spear, javelin hybrids, even more so in the upcoming 0.97 patch. Some Hetherly Tower hidden here on the side, as well as the Delupeng Emondwir, which they're in a pretty lethal spot here. If Cardolan, who are the opponents here for Mirkwood, advance forward unthinkingly, which is quite possible considering how Mirkwood don't have all that many infantry units, Cardolan might quite fancy their chance to simply swamping over them. The Delupeng are going to be here to start really biting into the side of their army with those body-piercing projectiles. The main line is going to be made up mostly, it looks like, of a combination of Hiri Lang and Hiri Alt, as well as some Hiri Ek in the middle. So all of these sort of mainline Mirkwood units are going to be here, but none of them are cheap. Most of to bring this many is a pretty large investment, and this is also going to be pretty much Mirkwood's only infantry line, so they're going to have to be quite careful if Cardolan do aggressively advance forwards. Got some more MITHRIN over here, as well as some more Hiri Lang, and then right at the back here we have the Athalion Inanwaith, which of course we've seen them numerous times be very, very strong indeed. And this is likely to be where the first engagement happens, a very simplistic field battle to decide the control of the left portion of the map. And we have Torres playing as Cardolan, and at the front here he's got some Minuscarithlin sharpshooters, who, to be fair, crossbows have got a lot of stopping power, and if they can close to the elves and start unleashing some volleys, they'll do some nice damage even to a lightly armoured faction like Mirkwood, with how much stopping power crossbows tend to have. But one of their unique selling points is the fact that they do double as armour-piercing mace men in infantry, as infantry, and it's not really the most useful thing to bring against Mirkwood, to be honest with you. But Cardolan, one of Cardolan's main strengths is crossbows, so I'm not too surprised to see them here, really. And they could still be useful against other factions later on. We've got the Greenwatch Garrison footmen over here, which obviously are very basic pike. Now they'll be shredded by Mirkwood's archers very, very quickly if the Mirkwood archers close with them. But if they can get into melee, they might be just the sort of thing that Cardolan need to keep the skillful elven infantry at bay. And then on the sides here we've got some Greenwatch Garrison spearmen. Very good tar pit actually, so if Mirkwood are foolish enough to try and shoot the Greenwatch Garrison spearmen from afar, the big shield value will start to come into play, and obviously they're not a very important unit to Cardolan's infantry anyway, They are just here to try and soak up some of that ranged fire and maybe add a bit more in terms of numbers to the infantry. We've got some Minotaur Men Guardians here as well, who again, you know, their unique selling point is that they are a hybrid crossbow. You know that only they are halberdier hybrids, so they obviously can do some very nice damage to cavalry as well. In general, a very strong unit. Quite expensive though. We'll see if they turn out to be worth it against Mirkwood, because crossbows, it'll be interesting. I'm not sure whether this is going to go too well for Cardolan overall. You know, this heavy crossbow focus they've gone for. Got a lot of Skirmish swordsmen as well, which, as far as the standard men-at-arms unit goes, they're certainly, you know, they're all right. But one of the main problems, of course, is the Cardolan tend to have lower morale across the board, and that does affect even sort of the mid-tier units like this. So they will need a morale buffing unit to keep them in combat against the elves, and they certainly won't be killing off too many elves. Obviously, standard men-at-arms units like this are going to get ripped apart by stuff like ERED. And that's going to be just about it here. On the side, we've got some Wardens of Tirn Gorthad, which obviously they do buff morale, so this could be exactly what they need, as do the Hearthguard of Amon Sul back here. The Mercenary War Chiefs also going to need a little bit of morale buffing, but they are a two-handed swordsman, so a little bit more skill, so maybe they will be a little bit better placed to fight the elves, although they will still be horribly outclassed. At the back here, though, we have the Generals unit, which is the Dunedain Captain unit with the armour upgrade. They will be able to go toe-to-toe with most elven units. Only the Athalion Inanwaith across the way are going to be able to defeat them one-to-one. And then here we have the Tharbad Warhammers as well, but again with the AP focus, so again, maybe not too efficient against Mirkwood. And then finally we do have the Royal Court of House Thorondor, but unfortunately if Cardolan had gone for a more cavalry-focused approach, they could have overwhelmed those horse archers over there, but there was always the possibility that Mirkwood could have brought their very deadly spear cav, so that probably informed Cardolan's decision to go lighter on the cav. Meanwhile, in the Mountain Pass itself, the next blue team player, we have Frostlaw playing as Isengard. He's got some wargs at the back here who can go wherever they need to lend some support. We have at the back here several units of Uruk-hai infantry, obviously a very solid frontline soldier, and overall they aren't quite as good as some of the more elite units, stuff like the Castamir's Legion for example, but they aren't far behind, so they will be able to defeat most sort of standard human man-at-arms units, just because of their numbers, and overall their quality is better than most other orc factions. Isengard a little bit more of a professional look. We have the Uruk-hai crossbows, of course, another very strong pillar to Isengard's army. A couple of units of berserkers it looks like as well, so again a lot of damage here. Potentially quite weak to arrow fire. They do have multiple HP, but as soon as that HP has been expended, they get ripped apart by arrows from afar. In 0.97, the derpy trolls of the White Hand are gone, so you know, take a good look at these guys while they're still here. They are very strong despite their sort of goofy look, even here in 0.96. Several units of pikes as well, of course, so 4 units of pikes. So again, a quality-focused Isengard army here, which of all the orcs, you would probably expect this most from Isengard, just because they do have quite a lot of options in the mid to high tier. And there is a couple more units up here from Isengard, I believe. Indeed, there are a couple of units of Uruk-hai Reavers, but they are isolated horribly. You'd imagine they're going to get overwhelmed. The blue team ally to Isengard is going to be, well, there's some Uruk-hai crossbows up here helping out. But they are going to be helping out Minhash, who's playing as Arthedain, obviously, formerly known as Arnor, in a time long since past. So we've got some Evandin Spearmen here at the front, which obviously, you know, basic militia spears go, they're probably one of the better ones in the game, in spite of the fact that their armour consists of them wearing shorts. We've got some Arthedain Marksmen with the first level of armour upgrades. Their breastplate is here, so obviously they should be able to do decently well in a skirmish fight. Some Wardens of the North as well over here. Is this the Generals unit? It is, so the Wardens of the North, obviously one of the AP archers in the game. We also have some Dunedain Scouts, and then the rest of the army consists of Arthedain Pikemen. We've got some hidden Dunedain Rangers, as well as some Merc War Chiefs. You don't see these guys too often, mainly because you usually see the dismounted Fornoster Rain Knights, but we see both today, so a little bit more of an aggressive, skill-based approach here from Arthedain, which is interesting. We also have some Dunedain Peacekeepers, some more Arthedain Pikemen, more Peacekeepers, and then at the back, some Fornoster Rain Defenders, as well as some Illuminas Gate Guards. So an interesting composition this from Arthedain. Meanwhile, across the way, the other 2 red team players are going to be Tic Tac, who's playing as Dol Amroth. This is, of course, the 0.96 version of Dol Amroth, which may be a little bit underwhelming. But in Mountain Pass, obviously, it really is just a matter about how your infantry composition manages to hold up, what sort of position you take. Can you acquire the high ground and stay there and hold your ground? The Athlon Men-at-Arms are going to be here at the front, just, again, very basic unit, very similar to the Skirmish Swordsmen in terms of what they can accomplish. Some Tirithea Marksmen, obviously a Trebuchet. If that gets into a good position, that could be a match winner. There's also some Black Swan Vanguard in here, several units of Athlon Halberdiers, Some mounted Swan Knights, which obviously as melee cavalry are strong. They need to be careful they don't get overwhelmed by wargs though. And then some Belfalas Marines, as well as some Nimrodale Rangers, as well as some Tirithea Wardens. And then finally, the middle red army is going to be Pharaoh, who's going to be playing as the Dwarves of Khazad-dûm, obviously very, very strong as we've seen. Dwarven Miners. They won't be as strong in 0.97, but they still will be an infantry wrecking ball. We have some 4th Legion Shield Guard back here, as well as some 2nd Legion Axe Guard, lots of the Legion units I would imagine, another unit of 2nd Legion, some Sentries of Khazad-dûm, some more 4th Legion, some Warriors of Khazad-dûm, some more 2nd Legion. I would imagine some elites are going to be hidden around here as well. Warriors of Khazad-dûm with the armour upgrade, some more Sentries back here, some more Warriors, some Khazad-dûm Reclaimers, obviously capable of dishing out quite a lot of damage from afar. A couple more units of 4th Legion and some Sentries. And then at the back here, I'd imagine this is where their leadership corps is. We have some more Khazad-dûm Reclaimers, and then over here we indeed have the Legion Bodyguard and the Mithril Guard. So again, very, very strong. But again, it's going to be over here where the battle starts. So let's begin. As Mirkwood already in range of Cardolan, and obviously Cardolan do not have long range in their compositions here. All they have are crossbows, which means they can't really return fire. And unfortunately for them as well, a lot of their army is made up of these sort of slightly cheaper pike units, which of course are going to be ripped asunder by Mirkwood. So Cardolan, they do have this sort of terrain over here that they can try and use to their advantage to try and sort of cover themselves. But really, Mirkwood will be looking at this and they'll be happy with the composition matchup here. I definitely think Mirkwood have, in terms of just picking the armies, they can certainly count themselves as having a bit of an early advantage here. Cardolan can do really nothing. If Cardolan want to be defensive, they can't really do anything against Mirkwood's archers. And all Mirkwood need to do is just sort of whittle them down piece by piece, and then when they're weak enough, just sort of move forwards and start killing them off. And getting these pikes into loose formation will do very little against the elves, to be honest with you. The elves have got accuracy to the point where they're just going to rip through these units even in loose formation. And again, these pikes would be a very effective tool to anchor your line against Mirkwood, but they're going to be destroyed. And here, I don't think Cardolan have got any choice but to be aggressive here. They need to just push forward everything. If they just push forward their pikemen on their own, they're going to get destroyed. Push forward the crossbows as well. You need to put some pressure on Mirkwood here, because as it stands, Cardolan, like fish in a barrel, just being shot to pieces. What have we over here? Dunedain scouts, just sort of testing the Dol Amroth lines, although with the presence of the Swan Knights means that they're not really going to be able to do all that much, unless they have the support of the Wargs, of course. Meanwhile, we do have the Uruk-hai Reavers. Have they been spotted? They have, and the Khazad-dûm Reclaimers are coming over here, which is interesting. If I were Frostlord, I would charge the Khazad-dûm Reclaimers as quickly as possible, because you could kill off a fair number of them with 2 units of armour-piercing shock infantry. Of course, they're going to get shredded by these axes, at least one volley of these axes. That is nasty. But deploying both of these units up here was probably a mistake overall anyway, and it's one that you really just have to try and make the best of at this point. The Khazad-dûm Reclaimers are stronger than a single unit of Uruk-hai Reavers anyway, as the axe throwers try to pull back, and they're going to leave it to the Warriors and the 4th Legion. Meanwhile, back over on this side, you can see the Dagnirim actually taking a charge from the Royal Courthouse to Rondor. That's interesting. But still, more of the Mirkwood skirmishers just laying waste to those Cardolan infantrymen. But the Dagnirim again getting a little sloppy as the Royal Court managed to nip at their heels, killing off a couple more of them. See there, the Ilazgalan are going to be pulling out wide as well, trying to support the Dagnirim. And they're still getting chased, hounded by the very fast Royal Corps, and obviously this is the downside to not bringing any of Mirkwood's spear cavalry. Usually a sort of cav fight is an area where Mirkwood can feel fairly comfortable as long as there's no skirmish fire being poured into them. But not this time, only with the Dagnirim. Obviously here the Arguay, here Pang, it's, having no answer to Mirkwood's skirmishers is always about, like, you can see all of the bodies here, the poor Miniscarithnan sharpshooters who've been fed into the wood chipper basically. There's also the Greenwatch garrison footmen who I believe have sort of retreated into hiding, trying to conceal themselves from the archers, which is really all they can do, and I think this is going to be a harsh lesson here for Torres. Giving Mirkwood impunity in the long-range skirmish is going to hurt a lot, and so far Cardolan's crossbow focus, which can do so well in certain situations, is not helping them here, as Mirkwood continue to pepper them down. Well, got some wargs over here. The Dagnirim are still being chased. They're almost in the very corner of the map at this point. Still trying to run. Royal Court are still hunting them down, although at this point the Dagnirim are also shooting behind them, trying to kite them. And the Royal Court are now starting to drop, so ultimately this very aggressive play, which initially yielded some results, has been going on a little bit too long here for this Cardolan cavalry. They probably should have backed off after they had made some initial gains and tried to charge into the Mirkwood archers, to be honest with you. That was where the real threat was to the main bulk of the Cardolan army. At this point the Royal Court are so far away from the other engagements that it's not really going to they're not really going to be of great help, and also now that they're starting to drop, the Dagnirim might be able to take them on in melee in a moment, now that they're down to just 11 men. Meanwhile, up here, the Uruk-hai Reavers have been utterly vanquished, which again is unsurprising. You can't really ask sort of very basic Orc axemen to hold this ground up here all on their lonesome, especially against Khazad-dûm, who just overwhelmed them entirely. Still, over here, we can see the Dagnirim just sort of running around the perimeter of the map, shooting down the Royal Court as they try to chase them down. So far, bows have been the bane of Cardolan's existence. These Hiri Peng at this point are out of ammunition, to be fair. The Dunedain scouts are over here, interestingly enough, from Minhash. So I think at this point the blue team has realised that Cardolan has absolutely no answer to long-range skirmish firepower. And so all of the blue team are sending over some support to try and shoot Cardolan from afar. Now, of course, this could backfire. This is going to mean less archers that the other two are going to have to deal with. And if Khazad-dûm and Dol Amroth dig in, especially with a trebuchet, it could get pretty grisly. But I fail to see how Cardolan are going to make this work for them. They could, of course, do what we saw last time on this map and try and retreat around here, but as soon as they started to move, that would be Mirkwood's cue to move forwards. Once again, the Skirmish sharpshooters are moving in. I feel kind of bad for the Cardolan player here, honestly. Clearly he was hoping to be able to take up a very defensive position, use the stopping power of his crossbows, but it was quite naive to assume that you could do that against Mirkwood. Like, they are obviously not going to charge in, they are going to use their archers to their fullest. More shots coming in from the Dunedain. Although the Dunedain scouts are going to get a couple of bolts for their trouble. Still yet more sharpshooters falling by the wayside. Well, the Dagnirim's still running, although I think that was the end of the Royal Courthouse Thorondor, so the Dagnirim, if they still have ammunition, they're probably going to go back over and start taking pot shots at Cardolan once more. Down here at the foot of the hill, the Uruk-hai moving forth. Some Uruk-hai pikemen. So getting ready, they don't want to go unthinkingly into a Khazad-dûm defensive position. Actually, I didn't really see much in the way of archers from Khazad-dûm either, which that could be a real problem. If they've got nothing to answer those Uruk-hai crossbows with at range, then they are going to be entirely reliant on their ally Dol Amroth here, and it does look as though both armies are going to be taking up a position here in the centre of the map, which is interesting. Last two times we've seen the highest peak be used for that sort of thing, but now over here in the middle, which is, you know, if Khazad-dûm do have no archers, they're going to need some archer support from Dol Amroth to help out against Isengard's crossbows. You can see the crossbows already moving forward, getting ready to take some pot shots at those miners. The Dagnirim are on the way back. The wargs are in support. Still quite a touchy-feely encounter so far, though, to be honest with you. I'm honestly surprised that with Cardolan sufficiently softened up that Mirkwood have not moved in. It is still dangerous, don't get me wrong, with these crossbows present, but Cardolan's infantry, other than the Dunedain captains and possibly the Wardens of Tir and Gorthard, if they position themselves correctly, none of them are going to be a match for any of the Mirkwood units in melee. Even the Hiri Peng will be a real problem for stuff like the Greenwatch Garrison Spearmen and the Skirmish Swordsmen. Dunedain scouts are trying to get into a position where they can shoot. Again, just trying to skirmish down what little remains of these crossbow units. After the mauling they received at the hands of the Elven archers, doesn't look like that's going to change too much either. The Dagnirim coming in again, strafing the Cardolan crossbows. Cardolan still do have their Minotaur Roman Guardians, of course. And at this point, these crossbow units are so weak that they're actually, you know, these arrows could be better spent elsewhere, to be honest. And these crossbows are also so far in front that you could probably hunt them down with infantry fairly easily. But I suppose at this point, why chain, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That sort of mentality from Mirkwood, where they've been quite happily shooting Cardolan from a distance all this time. Why change it now? Still yet more of these men getting shot. They're actually still eager, which surprises me. Cardolan's morale is not the best. Dwarven miners just sort of getting ready to meet any form of Isengard advance. Potentially hoping to bait some crossbow volleys out of them as well. Which naturally shooting Dwarven miners is not going to be the best use of their ammunition. A little bit confused as to what Arthedain is doing here. A very conservative approach so far from especially the blue team. The blue team have got an advantage at this point, so I feel like it's kind of on them to try and move forwards. Like Arthedain as well, they would definitely be better off sort of heading up this way, letting Isengard go around the other way with the support of Mirkwood, because then you can surround the enemy, which is definitely the way that I would be going about doing things here. But here you can see the Dag near him, still shooting what remains of these Miniscarithan sharpshooters. Cardolan, of course, get new unit models in the next patch, which I have shown off once. And I do like playing as Cardolan actually, but obviously their composition has really worked against them so far here. And I am a little bit surprised actually that Mirkwood have not sent their Hiri Peng that are out of ammunition forwards to try and hunt down these Cardolan crossbows sooner. Because yeah, they're going to take some casualties from these volleys on the approach, but as soon as they get into melee, it's going to be a very one-sided fight here. Heavy elven archers doubling as heavy elven swordsmen. Again, a point-blank volley. Only a couple of casualties, though, from these very depleted crossbowmen. The sharpshooters will pull out their maces, but the AP isn't really going to help them at all here. This is going to be the end of these two units, which the fates have conspired against them this day. The Cardolan crossbows are already wavering, of course. Far too far away from the main bulk of their army. Cardolan's low morale. Certainly not going to be helping them out in this situation. The same happening on the other side? No, interestingly enough. Still only this solitary melee engagement. But there they go, and then I imagine they're just going to swivel across and hunt down the other unit as well. The Dag near him are here. What are they going to be shooting at though? Again, you know, shooting arrows into the Greenwatch Garrison spearmen is never going to be... Ah, hello, he is going to do this. So Cardolan are now going to retreat behind this choke point. Which at this point he's well within his rights to do, because he's been battered so far. So he's going to be using these Greenwatch Garrison spearmen as a sort of rear guard action. And I'm a little bit surprised actually, when Mirkwood saw him doing this, they really should have moved forward and attacked more quickly. Like, the advantage is theirs, but, you know, maybe being a little bit too conservative here. Like, they saw how well their archers were working early on, and they weren't willing to be a little bit more flexible, just sort of stick with the same plan. But obviously these Greenwatch Garrison spearmen, not good in sustained combat. I believe they only have an attack of 1, and obviously the spear mallets on top of that up against skillful elven units. Certainly not going to go too well. Might be able to get a few kills on those Dunedain scouts though. Meanwhile, bit of ooh, hello. That is a trebuchet. Getting some nice hits there on the Uruk-hai as they advance up the hill, and also some of those Dol Amroth archers, the Tirithea marksmen, getting into position. So this is going to force Isengard to move forwards. Honestly, if I was them, I probably would have been quite tempted to retreat from this, because this is not exactly the sort of thing you want to advance into. Khazad-dûm, backed up by some Dol Amroth siege and skirmishers, is not exactly happy fun times for these men. I mean, there are the trolls that are moving forward, so that would certainly help. Arthedain need to get their hustle on here, because their allies are going to need a little bit of help. I would still say certainly the blue team have started this match far stronger, just because of Cardolan's woes here on this side, but Arthedain needs to be a little bit more proactive. Most of his army is not moved from the starting position that they were in. There goes Cardolan's legendarily low morale for a human faction. The Greenwatch Garrison spearmen hideously outmatched here by the elves. Still some of them in melee though. They are shaken. They're still fighting hard, giving time for their allies to retreat behind the choke point. try and fight Thermopylae style, which is Cardolan's only real hope at this point, to try and blunt the fangs of the elves by using stuff like the Wardens of Tir and Gorthad. Try and get their Minotaur or Men Guardians into a position where they can turn this fight around. Try and use Mirkwood's lower numbers against them. Dagnirim going to move forwards, as were the Dunedain scouts, but at this point the manoeuvring has already been accomplished by Cardolan, getting ready here in this very narrow choke point to try and hold the line. They still have those half guard of Amon Sul as well, so they do still have an archer unit as well, but I do still question the ability of these Cardolan melee units against Mirkwood in particular. Meanwhile, here is the engagement. You can see actually the trolls have managed to push a long way up the hill, but trying to get into the archers and the trebuchet, but there's only so far this is going to carry them. The trolls to the white hand are really very, very strong, but there's a lot of dwarven infantry back here. Dol Amroth infantry, you know, they're not terrible either, so... There's also the Khazad-dûm reclaimers. So the trolls, it was brave, but, you know, the trebuchet is going to get away, and look at that blob there, the Black Swan Vanguard with their AP. Meanwhile, this frontline fight should be interesting, but the dwarves have the high ground, and that is a lot of units that is going to be very, very strong. Obviously the 4th Legion adding a lot of mass to the line, a lot of dwarven pikes, dwarven infantry as well. I mean, Isengard's infantry for orc standards is pretty good, but Khazad-dûm are a whole nother matter. Really, in 0.96, Imladris can certainly boast having infantry good enough to take on Khazad-dûm if they go very quality heavy. But even then, Khazad-dûm are so strong. The crossbows trying to get into position. The Berserkers are here, which, you know, their heavy attack and AP focus could certainly help. But this is not a good engagement for Isengard here. I mean, it says that, to be fair, the crossbows do have a good shot. The hill, in that sense, is working for Isengard. And now the Berserkers are on the front line, which will certainly help do a little bit more damage. Both units of Berserkers, I believe, as well, so the Dwarves will be in some danger of taking some losses. The Miners are here, but once again, here comes the Trebuchet. Only a very grazing hit there on the combination of Uruk-hai infantry and Arthedain marksmen back here, so Arthedain offering some peripheral support. But I'm very surprised, honestly, that all of Arthedain's army is coming down this way. That means they're going to be funneling themselves into one uphill choke point, which the dwarves are going to be loving that. Khazad-dûm very, very powerful. And with the backup from Dol Amroth will be able to commit all of their resources to help that, as opposed to trying to hold off Arthedain from the other side, which, honestly, it surprises me that this is how they've decided to go about things. Meanwhile, the Dagnirim are here. Do they still have ammunition? Those pikes are hidden. And they're going to reveal them. So, yeah, these pikes are going to kill off the Dagnirim very, very easily. The Minotaur Roman Guardians getting some kills. But at this point, honestly, the Mirkwood player would probably be better off just letting the Dagnirim absorb some of this arrow fire. Because it is Cardolan's ranged units at this point, both of these two ranged units, really their only hope of getting a positive result against Mirkwood. If it comes down to just pure melee, even with the elites back here, Cardolan not going to be in a good place against Mirkwood. Mirkwood have elites of their own, after all. Meanwhile, the Uruk-hai still trying to force their way up the hill. But that is a trebuchet hit. And there were Berserkers in there as well, and really Berserkers are going to be Isengard's primary method for trying to deal damage to the dwarves here. And again, a trebuchet can be a risky pick. It's very expensive and it can potentially be useless, but on this kind of map, where it's very likely that choke point style warfare is going to be what decides things, the trebuchet can be utterly devastating. The most splash damage of any siege equipment, except for arguably the Mangonel, although the Mangonel's a little bit strange and is 0.97 only. The Misty Mountains will be able to utilise that on maps like this with great effect, I'm sure, but for now, trebuchet proving its worth. Tirithea marksmen moving down the hill. If they are out of ammunition, I would imagine they're probably... Yep, they have. They pulled out their swords. So they're just going to be committed to the front line. Make sure that this choke point holds its ground. See again, this dwarven front line. A lot of pikes in there. The Arthedain marksmen doing their best to try and help weaken it. But again, to arrow fire from the front, Khazad-dûm probably the strongest faction, certainly in 0.96 with their armour, their shields. There are miners in here, to be fair, which, you know, less so, but even then. All of these Uruk-hai pikes are doing their best. Berserkers are in there as well, with their sort of cross between an axe and a sword. You could also say it's a hammer, I suppose. A very strange weapon overall. But here come the 4th Legion Shield Guard coming downhill to help bolster the line. Another unit of sentries. The Trebuchet, which has already been a bit of a menace for Isengard's advance. Doing their best to sort of keep up this assault. But if this is how they're going to be attempting to go about their business, then Arthedain are going to be the ones that have to ultimately win the day for the blue team, because Isengard will not live to see the end of the battle if they keep committing their units into this grinder. Khazad-dûm Reclaimers are over here as well. Uruk-hai crossbows reloading, the Wargs are here. The Wargs could try and cycle all the way around. Meanwhile, what's going on here? Aha! We do have a melee engagement, although it's only a singular unit of Hiri Peng going into the Cardolan pike line. Some support from Minhash as well, the Arthedain army, the Evendim spearmen coming forward. They could, I believe they have shield walls still, the Evendim spearmen. They could try and push through these Cardolan crossbows, although there are Miniscarithlin swordsmen in close proximity. And they will be able to defeat the Evendim spearmen. They may not be able to defeat Elven infantry, but Arthedain militia is something they can certainly manage. And now they're coming forward to help hold this line. Arthedain trying to sort of dribble around the sides here, and they are kind of able to do that. But they already rout. Again, trying to push through with militia is always... They need a lot of support to do that, otherwise their morale just crumbles. Also with the Hearthguard here, in close proximity, they will be encouraging the Cardolan troops to hold their ground. So the primary weakness of a lot of Cardolan's units will be circumvented. Now the Aradirith and the Hiri Peng together are a pretty nasty combination. That AP is going to be very useful against the Cardolan infantry. But all Cardolan can hope to do at this point is try and sort of make up for the losses they took earlier on. And they've certainly made life a little bit more difficult for the Mirkwood player here. Meanwhile... Oh, here we go. The continuing sort of... There's a lot of dwarves in a big mass there. As this sort of central conflict continues, more dwarven units being sent forward, some warriors of Khazad-dûm with the armour upgrade and without the armour upgrade, both being sent forward. That is still a lot of Uruk-hai to cut their way through, however, and there is still the matter of the Arthedain reinforcements, but I would also say that I haven't seen a huge amount of Dol Amroth units committed yet, so they can also come forward and fight. Mirkwood is going to need to defeat Cardolan with some units to spare, I feel like, however. Because so far this has certainly not been a cost-effective endeavour for Isengard. Again, when that Trebuchet started bombarding them, when they started taking range fire, I suppose they thought, I either attack now or I pull back. And the Isengard player decided to attack, which is bold, and I can respect that. But that doesn't mean to say it was necessarily the smart thing to do. There's a couple of units of 2nd Legion coming down now, which that AP is going to be a pretty nasty thing for the Uruk-hai to have to deal with. They won't have to deal with the charge, of course, because they'll have to sort of filter their way to the front. That's actually 3 units of 2nd Legion as well, but obviously the Uruk-hai, with the exception of the Berserkers, a little bit more about their armour, decent equipment, but the 2nd Legion are going to have absolutely no trouble cutting their way through the Uruk-hai armour. 2 phalanxes colliding, and Isengard's phalanx is usually a very effective one, but Khazad-dûm here, again, their infantry is king. Meanwhile, another choke point fight on the other side. Mirkwood slowly but surely carving their way through the Cardolan defenders. The Hearthguard of Amon-Sul getting some pot shots against the Hiri-Ek, but it might be at this point time for Cardolan to commit forward an elite unit here. They're going to need something like the Dunedain Captains or Tharbad Warhammers to stop these quality elven units. They do still have some swordsmen in reserve as well. The Mercenary War Chiefs are here, which should be able to do a little bit more in terms of damage than the sort of basic men-at-arms units which Cardolan have been relying on so far. But again, even these cheap pikes, without these cheap pikes, Mirkwood will have already cracked this line. So the Wardens of Tir Gorthad, when they come forward, will also be of great import to this Cardolan line. You can see here the Skirmish swordsmen being committed forwards, trying to sort of patch things up. Again, I don't think Cardolan are going to win this ultimately, but they can make life more difficult for Mirkwood and make their victory a little bit less total than it looked like it was going to be. You can see over here that there are some Arthedain pikemen now moving around. Arthedain's army in general has completely turned around at this point, which is, I'm honestly surprised they didn't do this sooner. It might already be too late though, because while this fight over here is still going to take quite a long time, will Isengard still have an army worth committing this level of forces against by the time Arthedain starts approaching from the other side? They might be able to simply shift all of their strength from this side over to the other side of the mountain pass. You can see that Dol Amroth still have a defensive setup over here. Most of Dol Amroth's infantry is actually still over here. And there goes the trebuchet fire. What are they aiming for? The wargs? Chance of hitting them. I mean, they did, killing off a few of those wargs, but again, the warg's not really too dangerous at this point. As long as they keep their sort of defensive shape here in the middle, don't allow the enemy to breach their defences, which if they do, that's the sort of thing which can decide the game anyway. The wargs are unlikely to be too much of a problem. And if worse comes to worse, they do have their Swan Knights, which will be no pushovers, but you can see slowly but surely the Uruk-hai, a lot of them on the front line now becoming shaken. They're very tired. They're outnumbered and outgunned here by the Dwarves of Khazad-dûm. They're going to need some more support on the front line. The wargs are now starting to run. The Arthedain marksmen continuing to try and get some kills from afar, but what they're able to do is rather limited. Meanwhile, the continuing of this fight over here, we can now see that some of the mercenary war chiefs are on the front line as well, but Mirkwood's skill proving to be a bit of a tricky one. Some Evendim spearmen, which returned from routing, also committed forwards. More mercenary war chiefs being committed to the front line. You can see the ERED still in pretty decent health. They have actually taken some losses, to be fair, but ultimately they are going to be cutting their way through the Skirmish units with relative impunity. Minotaur Roman Guardians continuing to fire. Hiri Youth as well, again a very good line infantry unit of really high quality. Something which Cardolan cannot really boast at this point in time. The Dunedain captains, when they are added to the front line, however, should give Mirkwood a little bit more pause. But you can see here Mirkwood still have plenty of reserves. Still got units of Hiri Lung. They still have stuff like the Athalion Nanwyd somewhere as well, which... Ooh, and the Dalupang are coming forward now. So that there's body piercing. Right into the glut of mercenary war chiefs as well. They do actually have a shield value on their back, but obviously it is quite limited. The body piercing itself is enough to do a lot of damage to these Cardolan units. You can see Mirkwood already starting to wrap around the line. Minotaur Roman Guardians perhaps out of ammunition, being committed forward to the front line now. The Halberdiers, they're going to be plugging the gap here where the ERED looked like they were going to smash through, and that's still a battle which the ERED, they're a little bit better in melee. Definitely a favourable engagement for them up against the Minotaur Roman Guardians. The Hearthguard are here. You can see that they're trying to get into a position where they can return fire onto the Dalupang. But obviously that does put them in the firing line themselves. Risky. Meanwhile, here come Arthedain's forces pouring forwards now, doing what they probably should have done from the start, to be honest with you. When Arthedain began their assault at the other side, I think Arthedain should have been attacking from this angle as well. Would have put a lot more pressure on the enemy. Also, the trebuchet could have only been in one place, whereas now, the damage the trebuchet has done has already been very significant, and in fact that is not a good sign for the blue team at all. That is a big rout, and that is... I'm not sure whether Isengard have got all that much left. I mean, what they have left is probably following Arthedain at this point. They've got some Warg Riders, some infantry. So, what I feared has come to pass. They have, they could have attacked from two angles, but now, they're just going to be able to reposition their defences to hold them off from this angle. But perhaps something of a little bit more worry for the blue team is the fact that these dwarven forces are continuing to move down the hill, and they could be trying to surround Mirkwood between the dwarves and what's left of Cardolan. Maitha Ilaz Galan are here. Now, if they are going to do that, they will need to hurry up, because Cardolan can only hold on for a little bit longer, you would imagine. And Mirkwood will have scored a fairly substantial victory over Cardolan if they start to fall apart too quickly, which could even the scores up slightly. But both Cardolan and Isengard definitely the armies which are in the roughest of shapes. Again, this Elven infantry, this front line needs support at this point. Cardolan are actually running away, which, that's unfortunate. You know, these units are not going to be of any use to you further back. You need to hold this choke point, otherwise Mirkwood are going to overwhelm you. It was a good idea to come back here. Now you need to make the most of that. Warns of Tingworth, maybe they're trying to sort of keep them out of range of the MITHRIN Asgallan and possibly the Delupeng. But you don't really have too much of a choice. You need to just keep committing units to the front line. The Warns of Tingworth are a good plank unit as well. They should be able to help hold down the fort for a little while longer. But there's all of the scattered Isengard units running for the hills. And this actually could be the moment the Swan Knights in particular have been waiting for. They now have the opportunity to get out into the open field and start doing some damage to Mirkwood potentially. Mirkwood, of course, do not have any cavalry of their own, which will be a significant threat to the Swan Knights, and the MITHRIN Asgallan already using up a lot of their ammunition. Combine that with the approach of some Dwarven reinforcements as well, and Mirkwood could be finding themselves in a bit of a sticky situation here. Now, of course, from this side, Dol Amroth will not be able to hold a line as well as the Dwarves, but it is still not exactly the most appealing front line to try and smash your way through. There's a lot of spears, a lot of halberdiers. Tirithea marksman here in support. The Trebuchet is also coming over here, and there is the Haven Guard as well, which was in that blob at the start. Haven Guard, obviously a very, very strong unit. The Numinas Gate Guards are here. And the Nimrodale Rangers as well, so that's body piercing they're going to have to deal with from this side as well. I think they cancelled their shot then, which is understandable. Meanwhile, over here, combination of the Warns of Tingworth and the Hearthguard of Amon Sul now charging in. That's enough to actually rout the Evendim Spearman as well, so at this point Mirkwood need to choose. Are they going to commit forward a lot more of their men to try and smash Cardolan to pieces quickly? Or are they going to try and divide their forces to meet the oncoming Dwarves? The Dwarves will take a while to get here, so if Mirkwood commit forward everything, there is a very real case for saying that they could overwhelm Cardolan. And they will need more reinforcements on the front line now, because the Warns of Tingworth and the Hearthguard of Amon Sul able to go toe-to-toe with the elves much better than the basic units that came before them. A couple of the Hearthguard sort of leaking through the line, engaging the MITHRIN Asgallan in melee, causing them to stop throwing their javies. Again, considering the really bad start that Cardolan had, they've made the best of things, really. And elsewhere, the blue team have not been having quite the same luck as they had earlier on the more open section of the map. Meanwhile, Tic Tac here, thinking about leaving the safety of his lines. Dunedain Rangers doing some body-piercing damage to the Dol Amroth front line, which will be frustrating for Dol Amroth, but ultimately not terminal, I don't think. All Dol Amroth need to bear in mind is the fact that Isengard are very weak now. So it could really be seen as sort of a straight battle between themselves and Arthedain. And if all goes well on the other side, with the Swan Knights over here, you can see also the Thieves of Tharbad, which have revealed themselves. That was a cheeky little ambush there, because the Thieves of Tharbad now going to be able to assist the Swan Knights in sort of disrupting the Mirkwood rear lines. There are the Dunedain Scouts. What are they going to do? Thieves are here, and they're going to get ripped apart by the well, the scouts are going to get ripped apart by the thieves. Mirkwood, obviously, you know, in terms of numbers, probably feeling the heat a little bit now, and with the support of the dwarves and the Thieves of Tharbad, I think this is a fight where they've actually, the advantage is probably no longer theirs. They still have some very strong units which they can use, certainly. What are these guys doing? A sort of single file on the boundary of the map. Athalion Inanwaith are in here as well, but now all of Cardolan has moved forward. Now they sense that the time is now. So the Tharbad Warhammers and the Dunedain Captains are here. There are some Hetherley Tower as well, but That's a lot of Cardolan elites, and you know, those javelins still doing some danger, some damage. What about the Swan Knights? The Swan Knights did take a few losses. The Dunedain Scouts now running. What do the Thieves of Tharbad go after? Hiri Lung? I mean, this is still going to be tough for the Thieves of Tharbad, but just the fact that Mirkwood are being attacked from multiple angles at this point, considering how badly the Isengard assault went in the middle, the blue team are probably feeling the pressure at this point. Fighting amongst the corpses of the Swan Knights. Hiri Lung, ultimately the numbers going against the Hiri Lung at this point. Although the heavy elven swordsmen, you'd probably still back them to beat the Thieves of Tharbad. Not without taking losses, but you would still back them. There are still the Swan Knights, of course, as well. The Swan Knights need to get back here and offer some support, as the dwarves are also coming forwards. The Agwe Inanwe surrounding these Thieves of Tharbad at this point, the Delupang pulling back. But you know, these thieves have sort of drawn off the Rangers. They've committed a lot of these Mirkwood forces, so that is going to take the pressure off this front line a little bit. Even so, Mirkwood probably still going to have just about enough. The support of those javelins, I think, has done enough damage to the Dunedain captains and the Tharbad Warhammers to allow the more skillful elven units to gain a bit of an advantage. The Athalion Inanwaith and the Maitha Ilasgalan turning around. Thieves of Tharbad defeat seems like a certainty. They've managed to kill off a few more of Mirkwood's units, however. There's an argument for saying the Thieves of Tharbad possibly should have waited until the dwarves had arrived. That would have made the assault that much more devastating. As the Delupang start to move forward, the dwarves obviously very, very slow. The Swan Knights finishing off what remains of the Dunedain Scouts, and now they'll be able to charge in with their mighty Zweihanders. Obviously they are a unit which is aesthetically and mechanically unchanged for the .97. They are still a very strong melee cavalry unit by intention, but the massive cavalry, when it charges in like that, is still capable of dealing an impressive amount of damage. Especially when Thranduil is in here somewhere. He is part of the Agwe Inanwaith unit. Swan Knights do need to be careful, obviously, because the longer they stay in melee against stuff like the Nanwaith, it's going to be pretty nasty for them. The Sentries of Khazad-dûm, though, taking a fully frontal volley from the Delupang. The rest of the Dwarven forces are coming forwards, however, here from Pharaoh in column formation. I do not know if Mirkwood are going to have the strength to stand. Meanwhile, the engagement over here, underway. Dol Amroth's infantry holding off the Arthedain assault, but certainly a big help there is going to be the Belfalas Marines. Those javelins with the armor-piercing damage. Very, very handy against Arthedain. And the Dol Amroth Trebuchet, which has proven to be a very, very sound investment indeed, still getting kills. It's paid for itself at this point. Anything now is just gravy. Helping to rout off the Isengard army. Very, very key moment of this battle, of course. I can see some Troll Slayers on the front line, but they are right in the firing line of the Dol Amroth archers and javelins. And this Dol Amroth front line holding the line resolutely so far. Whether they can continue to will be a pretty key factor in this battle. Meanwhile, have the dwarves sent across enough to kill Mirkwood? There's a lot over here, but a lot of the dwarven units are also shaking. Possibly under the weight of the javelin fire more than anything else. The Athalion Inanwaith are here, about to be partially surrounded by the warriors of Khazad-dûm. The Swan Knights need to be careful they don't go careening into stakes, because even with only 6 of them, the charges they inflict on the elves could well prove to be the difference maker. 2nd Legion just marching forwards as well. Mirkwood have done very well up to now, but I'm not sure whether they're going to be able to survive under the weight of a Khazad assault from the back, as well as having to continue to fight Cardolan over here. And it does look as though ultimately the Wardens of Tirngor, Tharbad Warhammers, Dunedain Captains and Minotaur Romen Guardians are going to be just about enough to finish the Mirkwood crew here off. Which again, if they didn't have to deal with this sort of attack from the rear, Mirkwood would obviously have easily overwhelmed Cardolan, but Cardolan able to hold on just long enough for support to come. The Swan Knights now still trying to disrupt the Maitha Ilasgalan, because they're still proving to be a bit of a problem for the dwarves, causing routing. The 2nd Legion are routing off, and they will get to the edge of the map, so they will not be coming back. So the Elven Javelin's proving to be an effective weapon here, but ultimately the numbers not looking good for Mirkwood. Thranduil is here, facing his most hated enemies. Mr. L'Oreal is unfortunately not going to be able to defeat the dwarves this time. They are shaken. But even the Athalion Inanwait, who are such a strong unit, ultimately I would expect them to beat this blob of infantry, but the problem they have is there's so many dwarves that have come over to assist. And again, there is a case for saying that maybe Mirkwood should have been a little bit more aggressive when they had that advantage over Cardolan at the start. Maybe they should have pressed it home earlier rather than allowing Cardolan to use this choke point here to their advantage. Because so far the choke points have worked in favour of the red team almost universally in this fight, whereas the blue team have had to be on the receiving end of such things. The Swan Knights also have come good. Here we can see the sort of final holdouts of the Elves, the Hetherley Tower. Defeat seems certain. Cardolan's army, of course, is not looking so good, but they still have an army, so they can still be a factor here, moving into the later game. Meanwhile, back here, the blue team are going to need something to go their way, which under trebuchet fire like that, another nice hit there on some Arthedain pikemen. The Dol Amroth front line, however, is holding. Again, Dol Amroth in 0.96 are not the, certainly not one of the better factions, but in a situation like this, their infantry is of high enough quality that they can certainly engage in this sort of warfare and have some success. And again, I feel as though if Arthedain had had an assault like this ongoing while Isengard were attacking from the other side, I still feel as though Isengard would have really struggled against the dwarves. But I can't help but feel like a well-constructed Arthedain assault over here against Dol Amroth, especially if the trebuchet was still helping the dwarves, would have been a difference maker in this fight. But then again, hindsight is 2020. Over here, the elves still fighting hard, and the Athalion Inanwait taking names alongside the Agwe Inanwait. In fact, I'm pretty sure the dwarves over here are starting to crumble. Here come the Swan Knights, killing off what remains there. But yeah, I mean, Mirkwood are going to win. That's crazy. The dwarves just not able to hold their morale together, and they crumbled in the face of the most elite unit. So Mr. L'Oreal is still alive and well, still with hope for his team. But I certainly feel as though if the blue team are going to get anything out of this, Mirkwood is still going to have to do yet more heavy lifting, because things are not going well for their assault against Dol Amroth in the middle. The 4th Legion are here, but they are also being attacked by the Athalion Inanwait, so I can't imagine that they will have... They're probably thinking at this point they made a bad decision returning from routing. Here come the Agwe Inanwait as well, the strongest of the Mirkwood units. The Dwarven Miners routing off the Warriors. Again, Khazad-dûm had to be involved in a pretty nasty fight against Isengard, to be fair, so, you know, in the end that has seemed to make the difference. Cardolan trying to advance forward as well. They do still have some elite units, but nothing, I think, which can defeat the Nunwith units. There's still those Swan Knights on the periphery as well. Leitha Ilazgalan. So here we go. I have to say, this fight between Mirkwood and Cardolan has turned out to be far more competitive than it looked like it was going to be. I still feel as though Mirkwood are going to have just enough to see themselves over the line, but credit to the Cardolan player for, you know, because they were in a bad situation. Here come the Wardens of Tir Gordad, the Tharbad Warhammers. They're going to try and go toe-to-toe with the Maithit Ilazgalan. Over here, meanwhile, the Nanwaith units are going up against the Dunedain Captains and the Minotaur Romen Guardians. Which again, Mirkwood should win this, but they are going to take a few more losses. And ultimately, I don't know whether they're going to have quite enough to... Oh, hello. Here comes some wargs in support of Mirkwood. And I think these Swan Knights know what's coming their way, so they're going to try and charge in here and get a few more kills to help Cardolan out before they are ultimately put to the sword. Just a single Swan Knight left. as he rides off into the sunset. As those walks continue to sort of make sure that none of these Dwarven units return. Here comes the Swan. He actually did manage to kill off one of the Athalioni Nunweight there as well. MITHRIN Asgalan taking more losses, but ultimately Mirkwood are, after some time, going to be victorious. Meanwhile, as we have a look over there, the Arthedain General, pinned by the Trebuchet. Uruk-hai crossbows in position as well. What is that over there? Routing pikemen. There's a red arrow over here as well. Madness. But yeah, they're starting to run out of steam over here. Dol Amroth are looking pretty good. Khazad-dûm Reclaimers getting into a position where they can start throwing their axes as well. There's still Haven Guard. So yeah, I think at this point it is very safe to assume that the red team are going to be victorious. This Trebuchet being very, very effective throughout the battle. Even with a hard-fought Mirkwood victory on the other side, they're not going to have enough. Dol Amroth still have their Haven Guard. Khazad-dûm still have their Legion Bodyguard and their Mithril Guard, I'm pretty sure. And there goes the Cardolan General. Thranduil in close proximity. Come over here in just a second, because I feel as though that is just about the end of Cardolan. So yeah, the first army to be completely destroyed on the field today is Cardolan's, as probably would be expected from the early engagements, but he ended up doing much better than I thought he was going to from the initial engagements. Meanwhile, where am I? Here we go. Black Swan Vanguard starting to get around the flank. The Mace Men are on the way. The Wardens of the North going to try and get some more volleys off. But this is bad tidings for Isengard and Arthedain. Both of their assaults haven't really gone all that well. More Trebuchet fire. Both units of Black Swans coming around the flank. Obviously quality Mace Men. One unit just being used to sort of prevent the skirmishers from having an easier shot. The other one being used to hammer an anvil charge the Arthedain and Isengard front line. Obviously well within the final 10,000 frames at this point. Dol Amroth managing to hold. Obviously the Athlond Halberdiers playing their part. The Nimrodel Rangers almost certainly racking up some kills with that body piercing. Haven Guard over here as well. You can see now that Khazad-dûm repositioning their auxiliary army, which did not go down and try and bail out Cardolan, which I'm sure they're probably glad about, although one or two more units probably would have been enough to finish Mirkwood off. They've only just still standing. As the Black Swan Vanguard continue to use that AP on their maces to wrap up this Arthedain and Isengard front line. That's going to be the end of those pikemen as they run for the hills. Nimrodel Rangers also sort of completing the surround here on the front line. Rangers have got good skill in melee, so they certainly have their uses in a purely infantry fight. Just everything being thrown in at this point. Belfast Marines may as well just try and break the spirit of the enemy as quickly as you possibly can. Dwarven units coming down here as well. Trebuchet fire just absolutely bisecting that unit of pikemen. There's Talon Knights as well, obviously another multiple HP unit that Dol Amroth still have left alive. Honestly, in 0.96, the Talon Knights are a little bit underwhelming for what they are and what they cost, but in this sort of situation, they're just going to hammer home the advantage which the red team have at this point. The Black Swan Vanguard continuing to fight really well here against Wardens of the North as well. I mean, eventually I think they're probably going to lose unless they receive support, which they are. Wardens of the North are a very strong unit, of course, but now with the support of the Talon Knights, that should be all she wrote. Here on the front line, Khazad-dûm Reclaimers coming down here as well. Pikemen losing the will to fight. The Uruk-hai infantry are still fighting hard though, refusing to rout. They will die for Saruman. They certainly will die for Saruman today because they have no hope of victory at this point. The Legion Bodyguard are on the front line now as well. Nimrodel Rangers. I do like the colour scheme on the Nimrodel Rangers. Here comes the Mithril Guard as well. No rest for the weary. Truly the assault from Arthedain and Isengard definitely ill-fated today. As Khazad-dûm and Dol Amroth able to hold and win this central engagement pretty convincingly in the end. Mirkwood able to pull out a narrow victory over Cardolan, but ultimately that's going to be little more than a consolation for the blue team. There goes Isengard's general. So this is going to be the end. All that's really left to find out is how well Thranduil will meet his fate. But a good fight, actually. And there are definitely some lessons to be learned from this one. Mountain Pass is honestly a pretty... Mountain Pass can work out in many different ways. Like, again, it's one of those maps which very rarely works out the same way twice. You know, I haven't really seen two factions hold this central area exclusively. Usually I've seen them try to defend this choke point down here and the choke point at the top. Whereas today, Dol Amroth and Khazad-dûm consolidated their forces, and that worked out very well for them. I feel as though the blue team could have mounted their assault a little bit better. But even so, such things can be saved for the final score screen. One to the north, not many of them left. Obviously, one of the pride of the Arthedain army, ultimately utterly overwhelmed here. Forward come the Khazad-dûm reclaimers as well with their two-handed axes. Just being overwhelmed piece by piece. There's a lot of routing going on as well, obviously. That trebuchet, lethal in the choke point fight. The morale damage it did was honestly probably just as significant as the physical damage that it did. And you could certainly argue that a catapult would have done just as well there, but a trebuchet, you know, the splash damage it can get in a choke point battle, heavy map like this, can sometimes just be too good to pass up. These ones in the north, there's still 4 of them left. They should probably get some of the stronger units on the front line rather than just the basic warriors. Only 2 at this point. Some Talon Knights are here now, the Black Swans. And there they go. Utterly vanquished. And so, we have Zero's Mirkwood army. Well, I'm not sure whether you could call this an army at this point. He has, you know, basically just over 50 men to his name. And Dol Amroth already getting ready to send forces down, so we'll turn it up to ×6 speed. While they get in position, ready to attack. Which obviously the onus is on the red team at this point to charge down the hill and finish Mirkwood off. You can't ask them to sort of mosey their way all the way up the hill, unless Dol Amroth goes for the trebuchet. Trebuchet is getting into position. I don't know how much ammunition it would have left though, because it has been sort of firing here and there throughout the whole battle, so chances are it doesn't have to... Oh, hello. Khazad-dûm reclaimers managing to get a volley off into the Agwe Inanwaith. Here come the Athalond Halberdiers forward. Not a lot of support in close proximity, however, so you know, the elves could still make a few things happen. Trebuchet isn't firing, so it's possibly out of ammunition. I doubt it would hit anyway. It doesn't have a lot of surface area to hit. Trebuchet is obviously a bit inaccurate. Halberdiers getting charged by the Athalion Inanwaith. Athalon Halberdiers routing off, feeding more kills into Mirkwood with this this kind of play here, Dol Amroth. But at this point, victory is already there, so why not? Dwarves are also coming down the hill. More Belfalas Marines. There's a lot of Halberdiers here, but they also took a really unfavourable charge from the Athalion Inanwaith, who managed to surround them as well as deal some shock damage. So basic halberds will not be able to hold up too long under that sort of pressure. Belfalas Marines and Khazad-dûm reclaimers. There is also some Black Swan Vanguard on the way. Their AP won't be too useful, but at this point, just crushing the life out of what's left of Mirkwood's army with sheer numbers is what is called for, I think. The Legion Bodyguard as well, which certainly will be a tough cookie. That's going to be the end of the Maitha Ilaz Galan, you would imagine, as well, being surrounded now by the Belfalas Marines. forward comes the Black Swans as well.
Our general lies slain upon the battlefield.
There goes Thranduil, bludgeoned by a mace. Probably not looking so pretty now. This is going to be the end now. The Athalion Nanwaith will almost certainly not rout, so they will just need to be destroyed to a man. Going up to ×2 speed. Again, just utterly overwhelming them, really. Obviously, the Athalion Nanwaith are a very, very strong unit, and they've done a lot of work in this battle as well. They were pretty much responsible for that Dwarven assault on their rear not fully working. Obviously, Mirkwood was still not looking great after having to kill that off and finishing Cardolan off, but they still won. And a lot of that was down to the Athalion Nanwaith. And there we go. That was a very matter-of-fact thing for the announcer to say. But yes, the blue team have been beaten, the red team victorious. And obviously Mirkwood getting the most kills again, not too surprising because they did very well against Cardolan. They also were able to kill off a detachment of the Dwarven army. But the key here really is the fact that the red team here had a far more consistent amount of kills across their factions, whereas Isengard and Arnor struggled tremendously. And again, I feel like this is a lesson in charging uphill in a single choke point into the dwarves is almost certainly never the right thing to do, unless you have absolutely overwhelming force. You really don't want to be doing that. Like, if they were going to do that, if Isengard really wanted to commit to that assault, then Arthedain should not have positioned their army just behind Isengard. They should have gone around and attacked Dol Amroth at the same time. Arguably, you could say they should have even waited for Mirkwood to fully finish off Cardolan, because they would have done so eventually, and without that rear assault from the dwarves, they would have done so with a decent amount of forces left. And then they could have supported Isengard going up through the middle here, and then Arthedain could have attacked Dol Amroth from the rear, and that probably would have been the better way to go about it. But at the very least, Isengard and Arthedain needed to attack two directions at the same time. And, if they wanted to... I feel like a bit of siege as well would have been helpful, just sort of make it so the Dol Amroth and Khazad defence in the middle would have been a little bit less comfortable. Because really, other than the crossbows that were sort of trying to fire in and affect that frontline fight between the dwarves and Isengard, the blue team really didn't have too many answers for how well dug in the red team ended up being. And even Cardolan, in the end, despite having a rotten start to the game, managed to pull it back a little bit and managed to make Mirkwood, pay in blood a little bit more than they would have done. But let's see what did the damage at Mirkwood, which obviously good kills across most of their units. The ERED doing very well, obviously, from range, and then that AP and melee also topping up their kill count. Arguay Nanwaith doing well. All of the archers did very well, which, considering that initial engagement between themselves and Cardolan, completely unsurprising. The Athalion Nanwaith as well, 295 kills only in melee, which is significant. It shows how strong they were, and that was against a lot of Dwarven infantry as well. Some of these units, the Dagnirim horse archers, always going to get a more limited amount of kills, but they still did okay. They managed to finish off the Royal Court of House Thorondor after all. Hetherley Tower and the Hiriouth in the end were, these sorts of units were committed when Cardolan were committing their elites as well, so the going got a little bit tougher then, but still, well played to all the players. Big thank you to Zero for sending this one in. He actually sent it to me towards the middle of December, so, we're towards the end of it now, nearly into the new year. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you will join me for whatever is next, which again, I'm not really sure of the order that I'm going to be doing things in, but I would think that the next Third Age battle I'm going to be doing would be one on Helm's Deep. So yeah, I hope you'll join me for that.